And welcome to Hannity Busy News Night tonight. So 3 days ago, the hate Trump media that we told you about at the beginning of the year was in a state of total, complete euphoria, running with wild speculation about a brand new bombshell report from BuzzFeed News. Story alleging President Trump directed his former attorney, Michael Cohen, to commit a crime and lie to Congress. And from the very second it was published, many so-called journalists, they're not, in the mainstream media, immediately rushing breathlessly, hysterically to judgment, predicting the president's impeachment. In fact, on Friday alone, fake news CNN, conspiracy TV MSNBC literally mentioned the word impeachment over 200 times. You think we're making it up? Nope. Take a look.
We're deep in the realm now of credibly impeachable offenses.
Impeachable.
Impeachment.
Impeachable.
Impeachment.
Impeachment.
Impeached.
Impeachable. Impeachment. Impeached.
Impeachment.
Impeachment.
Impeachable.
Impeachment.
Impeachment.
It seems like an impeachable offense.
Impeachment. Impeachable.
Impeached.
Impeachment. Impeachment. Impeachment.
Impeachment.
Impeachment.
Impeachable.
Impeachable.
Impeachment.
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 Impeached.
Impeachable.
Impeachment. This is the tip of the iceberg for a president that is going down.
Well, that didn't exactly age well. As it turns out, BuzzFeed's story was yet another sad, pathetic example of fake news in this country. On Friday night, a spokesperson for the Office of Special Counsel, they literally released a statement totally refuting the article. Now, in their rush to smear, slander, besmirch the President of the United States, members of the hate Trump media totally, willfully, purposefully missed all the glaring warning signs that I had talked about earlier in the day on my radio show. This is who they are. They are pathological Trump haters. They're not news people anymore. First, they had every obligation to show caution. Yet, not one of these establishment news outlets ever took the time to even try and verify the story. Not one. Now, the story was published by BuzzFeed News, a biased, journalistic dumpster fire that first published Hillary Clinton's dirty dossier, in that case, again, without verifying any of its phony contents. Next, one of the two reporters responsible for the latest piece of the fake news, Jason Leopold, he has a long history of just making stuff up. And by the way, issuing stories without any sources. This story was, of course, anonymous. For example, he once falsely reported Karl Rove was going to be indicted, and his own memoir was actually canceled because of accuracy concerns. And third, Leopold and the co-author in this particular case, Anthony Cormier, well, they never actually saw any corroborating evidence for their reporting, although one said they did and the other said they didn't. They couldn't even keep their own story straight. Take a look.
You have two law enforcement sources who tell you that they have seen evidence. Have you seen any of that other corroborating evidence?
No, I've not seen it personally, but the folks that we've talked to, the two officials that we've spoken to, are fully 100% read in.
Now, none of these red flags stopped the hate Trump media from covering the story wall to wall for nearly 24 straight hours, but they hedge it with, oh, if true. What they're really saying when they say that, this is going to be awesome. This will be great if it is true. But after they say, we haven't verified it, if true, it means this and this, and then you got endless hours of if true reporting. They say if true before reporting fake news. In their minds, that kind of makes it okay. As Michael Goodwin said, that would be media malpractice. Watch this.
The story, which has not been confirmed by NBC News.
We should note CNN has not independently confirmed BuzzFeed's reporting, nor, for that matter, has anyone else.
An explosive new report that, if true,
if you believe the reporting,
if this is confirmed,
if all of this is true,
if true,
we don't have sourcing that confirms this story, but we're not getting steered off of it.
we don't know for sure. You said you couldn't corroborate this.
If true,
this is a potentially very big development.
if it's true.
If true, and then they go on to spend a whole hour acting as though it's true. Now that they've been exposed yet again, the hate Trump media, they literally are whining and complaining that the president and his allies will use just this latest piece of fake news to call them out for who they are. They're afraid they're going to be smeared. The damage was done by themselves. Take a look.
The entire media world.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can all say we did the if trues, and we said we could not confirm, and that's all true. But let's, it was something that the entire media world was telling the public, this this is probably true.
Yeah.
By the way we covered this. Now look.
My view is this is the larger message that a lot of people are going to take from this story is that the news media are a bunch of leftist liars who are dying to get the president, and they're willing to lie to do it.
Well,
I don't think that's true, but
is that, is that different? I mean, that's not. That's
well, I'm focused on the media side. Preet's talking about the law enforcement side, but I mean, they're not contradictory. But I just think this is a bad day for us.
Because it is true. That's what you want. You cannot hide your giddiness whenever you think for the 400th time you got him. All right, we didn't get him this time, but we'll get him next time. Now, the media almost always gets it right. They claim, but don't believe your lying eyes. Remember, we're to be trusted, they claim. No, I think forever the term fake news is branded over their foreheads. Over the past 3 years, we have watched incident after incident. An extreme pathological hatred of this president has led the media to gleefully, hysterically report one fake news story after the other, predicting impeachment is coming along nicely. And you can tell they want that to happen. NPR lying about Don Jr.'s Senate testimony, or the fake reporting about Michael Cohen's fantasy trip to Prague, which never happened, or The Guardian's bombshell featuring Paul Manafort, Trump, and Julian Assange. Or what about the 3 CNN staffers, fake news CNN, fired over a false report about the mooch, Anthony Scaramucci? And it gets worse. Look at your screen. For 3 years, the fake reports have not stopped. We can go on all night doing this, one right after another, after another, after another, and we'll keep going. Now, the stories target everyone associated with Trump. That includes Ivanka, Jared Kushner, Nikki Haley. Oh, yeah, Brett Kavanaugh. Remember that one recently? And to even the First Lady of the United States and a 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid at the time, the son of the president. They are blinded by this hatred of Trump. It's every second, minute, hour of every day, and they're held accountable by almost nobody. They just move on to the next lie. The mainstream media has never been worse than what you now see it as, and yet these are people they want you to trust. You're supposed to trust. These are people with a monopoly on, quote, the facts, when in reality the hate Trump media is only an extension of the Democratic Party. Quick example. Manufactured crisis. Oh, they all use the same word. Coincidence? I don't think so. And even after this BuzzFeed bombshell was debunked, well, Democratic Congressman Shifty Schiff, he's vowing to investigate what we now know is a false claim, and we already know that it's false. What's to investigate? Take a look.
So there is a lot more to learn. And
are you still going to investigate the claims?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Congress has a fundamental interest in 2 things. First, in getting to the bottom of why a witness came before us and lied. And who else was knowledgeable that this was a lie.
What a waste of your time and money. Which brings us to our next Hannity history lesson, the death of journalism. Right here on this network, I pronounced journalism dead and buried after the mainstream media, they just refused to do their job and even vet in any small way then presidential candidate Barack Obama. We were among the only people to show Obama's ties. Let's see, Frank Marshall Davis, Acorn, Alinsky, 20 years in the pews of the GD preacher himself, the Reverend Wright, Obama starting his political career in the home of 2 domestic unrepentant terrorists, Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn. In fact, the only question, he got asked one time about Ayers and Dohrn during the whole campaign, and it was me the day before on my radio show that fed the question to George Stephanopoulos. He had never even heard about Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn, and that was the only time he was asked that question in the entire campaign. He didn't know about the seedy connection. And this turned out to be the only time Obama was ever asked about his, well, unrepentant domestic terrorist friends whose home he began his political career. Now imagine for a second, let's say Donald Trump started his political career in the home of unrepentant terrorists. How many times do you think your friends in the media would have asked him? Now, everyone else, they were worshiping the entire time Obama ran at the altar of Obama. Or as the ever so eloquent Chris Matthews put it, getting thrills up his leg. And of course, the media's bias started long before Obama, and we see this one-sided reporting exemplified in the constant, consistent rush to judgment, not only in the political world. Remember in the 90s, the media all but convicted in the press. I was in Atlanta at the time. A man by the name of Richard Jewell, that he was responsible for the 1996 Summer Olympic bombing there. And they said, well, he's single and he's a white man and he lived with his mother and his parents, so he fits the description of what a lone bomber would look like. Now, of course, Jewell was later vindicated, totally innocent. It turns out he was a hero that day, but it was too late. This man's life was ruined by the media. Richard Jewell once told me, he was listening to me that day when the story broke, that I was the only person in Atlanta that he knew that didn't rush to judgment. That was a valuable lesson for me in my life. And we saw something similar. Remember the Duke lacrosse case? On this show, I went out, we withheld judgment. We don't rush to judgment. I even went to and met with some of these kids in their parents in their home. That's called being responsible, trying to get information before I come to a conclusion. Don't forget about Darren Wilson. His police career is over. Ferguson, Missouri, for no reason at all. Or the officers in Baltimore. Remember the media? They were convinced that those cops were going to be convicted of murder, all 6 of them. None of them were. And when the media blindly touted Obama's statement that the Cambridge police, they acted stupidly. We didn't fall for that one either. Or the fake UVA rape claims published by Rolling Stone and picked up by every media outlet in the country. And don't forget about, some of the salacious gang rape claims made about U.S. Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh and that circus they put us through fairly recently. Flash forward to this weekend, and we have yet another example of the media again rushing to judgment. Remember, this whole thing with BuzzFeed happened on Friday night. For 24 hours, many in the media, then on Sunday, well, they were vilifying this teenage high school student who was filmed looking at a Native American man as he was, what turns out to be, praying and drumming in front of him. The teen was wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Uh-oh. And then the media, they went with wild speculation. They went with one small clip and raced to a conclusion. They said he was taunting the Native American man when, in fact, the Native American man actually walked over because he saw a ruckus beginning and trying to bring peace. One reporter tweeted that his smirk was weaponized and a weaponized facial gesture, which is derived from his white privilege. And then you had CNN, well, they had a contributor calling the teen deplorable and implied that he should have been punched in the face. And a BuzzFeed reporter said that it's the look of white patriarchy in the country. Failed comedian Kathy Griffin, the one with the decapitated head of the president, called for him to be doxxed. In other words, give out his address, his contact, so that, that puts a threat on the kid's life? Alyssa Milano tweeting that the red MAGA hat is the new white hood. And, of course, a Democratic congressman jumping into the fray, tweeting, quote, I'm calling for a total and complete shutdown of teenagers being able to wear Make America Great Again hats until we can figure out what is going on. What? They seem to be poisoning young minds, he said. And after receiving serious blowback for the attack on the First Amendment, the congressman said, oh, it's only joking. Never mind. He wasn't joking. This is just the same thing they did just less than 48 hours prior with the BuzzFeed story 2 days earlier. And naturally, all the statements we just showed you were based on what was a short video clip with no context and without any kind of investigation, just an overwhelming rush to judgment, hatred, because probably the kid was wearing a MAGA hat. However, additional video, when it became public, painted a much different picture. First, the group of teenage Catholic school students were being taunted and mocked by a radical group of activists. After some time, the Native American saw what was going on, and to his credit, he walked over, and what he said was a prayer. The boy said his story was, I just wanted to smile and say, show him that I meant no ill will towards anybody. It was the group of high school students. Well, they were the ones that were being called all sorts of names. And by the way, they were trying to be helped out by the Native American who walked over and said he was praying. Take a look for yourself.
Look at what America produces. This is the religion of America. Let's make America great again. A bunch of child molesters.
That's right.
Just like your damn Donald Trump.
Look at all these dusty crackers with that racist garbage on. Look at crickets.
A bunch of future schools.
That's right. They come again. Look at the hats.
Now, the Native American man, his name is Nathan Phillips. He said he was trying to create calm between the two groups with his drumming and praying at the same time. And I would be willing to bet his intentions were pure. Well, we have members of the extreme media that rush to judgment all the time in the Democratic Party vilifying this teenager, rushing to judgment with very few facts, very little evidence, no context. The group that was doing this are a bunch of radical racists, and they are well known for the horrific things they say and the things that they were saying to these young kids. Now, they tried to literally, in a short period of time, they were exposing this kid's name, his address. They tried to get him kicked out of school. Even the school jumped on the bandwagon shortly thereafter, and they demanded the young man's contact information be released. Why? So the public could harass him and his family and intimidate them without any facts. And as we've learned time and time again, nobody should rush to judgment. No one. And no one is safe from the radical left. They vilify, they smear, destroy, besmirch, bludgeon anyone who fits their idea of a conservative Trump supporter. They pretend to be tolerant. They pretend to be kind. They pretend to care about all people. That is a facade. That is not reality. The truth is, America's left tolerates no diversity of thought, no diversity of opinion. Anyone who they disagree with is open to this type of treatment. We're going to have a lot more on this throughout the hour tonight. But first, we also have, it is day 31 of the partial government shutdown. The president is working on real solutions to secure our border. It's not a manufactured crisis. 90% of our heroin crosses that southern border. And then, of course, all the crimes that we have highlighted on this show that have taken place by illegal immigrants that commit crimes. The 2%, not the 98%. The president wants to reopen the government. And with that, he offered to add DACA. I thought Democrats wanted DACA, protection for dreamers, and a deal. But, of course, before he even mentioned the deal, they already rejected it, as they've rejected every single day an opportunity to sit, talk, discuss, debate, and make a deal with the president. Take a look.
Our plan includes the following: $800 million in urgent humanitarian assistance, $805 million for drug detection technology to help secure our ports of entry, an additional 2,750 border agents and law enforcement professionals to physically secure our border. The plan includes $5.7 billion for a strategic deployment of physical barriers, or a wall, 3 years of legislative relief for 700,000 DACA recipients brought here unlawfully by their parents at a young age many years ago.
So the president is trying to do his job. Honest efforts, reaching out to the Democratic Party in every possible way, an invitation a day. They won't meet him. They're too busy traveling on paid junkets and using taxpayer money. And once again, they want to score cheap political points. I thought they cared about the furloughed workers. Apparently not. I guess they cared about the DACA kids. Apparently not. And the dreamers. Apparently not. The president tweeted, quote, Nancy Pelosi, some of the Democrats turned down my latest offer yesterday before I even got up to speak. They don't see crime and drugs. They only see 2020, meaning an election year, which they are not going to win. Best economy. They should do the right thing for the country, allow people to go back to work, and secure the borders. And while Democrats dig in and obstruct, even some in the hate Trump media, they're even beginning to admit that the president is making Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats look pretty stupid. Take a look.
They were in the bus heading to Joint Base Andrews. He made him look like fools coming back, sitting there at the Capitol in the driveway there, basically trying to figure out what's coming next. He caught them in the act as if they were sneaking out of town and made them look stupid. I mean, it clearly, well, it looked like a political dirty trick to me.
No, maybe they should stay and take the president's invitation and sit down at a table. Oh, when they had a chance to sit with the vice president weeks ago on a weekend, they sent their aides. They were too busy. Unfortunately, the cost of an unsecure border are growing more deadly every day. As you have seen right here on this program, Nancy Pelosi wouldn't meet with them last week. We have talked to angel moms and dads who have lost loved ones to illegal immigrant crime. And now tonight, we're learning that a suspected illegal immigrant was arrested this weekend in connection with a string of brutal murders, this time in Reno, Nevada. Now, authorities say that they have evidence connecting 19-year-old Wilber Ernesto Martinez Guzman to all 4 homicides, and that, quote, he is likely in the United States and was detainable. Border security is not a manufactured crisis. It is a reality. It's time for Democrats to stop the Trump hate, do their job, stop the political ploys and the lies, fund the border, which they supported 4 years ago, get the wall built that they supported 4 years ago, go to the table, sit down, accept the president's invitation, negotiate. In other words, it's time for them to roll up their sleeves and do their jobs. Maybe if they don't get another paid junket to a luxury resort in a chartered plane with a big carbon footprint. Up next, we have a panel reacting to my opening monologue. Also, Sarah Carter was at the Women's March in Washington, D.C. this past weekend. Our cameras were there, asking them about the anti-Semitic scandal surrounding 2 of the group's leaders. Their answers will shock you. Also, later tonight, we tell you about a news segment you don't want to miss, Hannity Watch, vetting the 2020 Democrats, something you will get nowhere else on TV or in the media. Straight ahead. All right, so the mainstream media took a major hit to their already dwindling credibility, and when they refused to go wall-to-wall covering the now debunked BuzzFeed report, in case you missed it, here's some of the despicable coverage. Take a look.
Still no reaction this morning from President Trump to a report that ties him directly to the very same offense for which the House of Representatives moved to impeach Richard Nixon.
That appears that if true, he'd be guilty of suborning perjury, potentially obstruction of justice.
This report is a huge deal, and you know, it's just these are very credible reporters. We're deep in the realm now of credibly impeachable offenses.
There are an awful lot of similarities between a couple of the articles of impeachment against Nixon and the elements of this story.
I see him going into a corner. I see him scratching back like a cornered animal. I think he's afraid.
All right, joining us, former Secret Service agent, host of the Dan Bongino show and podcast, author of a latest best-selling book, relatable podcast host Allie Beth Stuckey is with us, and former Michigan U.S. Senate candidate John James. Dan, I start with you. Look, if I can, I'll tell my friends in the control room, start scrolling again the fake news. This has happened. Literally, I printed out for 2017 alone the fake news stories about Donald Trump that they breathlessly report that turn out to be false was 47 kind of small printed pages. Yeah. That is a track record of people that have an agenda to destroy, not to the truth.
Yeah, Sean, journalism is dead. It's buried. It's gone. It gives me no pleasure in telling you that. But I warn everybody out there in America right now, in your search for truth, relying on journalists is a fool's errand. They are leading you down the wrong path. It's now clear as day. Sean, what you just said is accurate, too, but it's not just that there are 40-plus stories. I can see them out of the corner of my eye scrolling on the screen now. It's not just that, Sean. It's that these were major stories they got wrong, Sean. It wasn't like, Donald Trump ordered McDonald's when it was really Burger King. The dossier story in and of itself was debunked. The Deutsche Bank story about Donald Trump's bank records. The WikiLeaks story with Don Trump Jr. debunked. The story last week, Manafort gave polling data to the Russians. I mean, I don't want to take up those. I could go on all day. You get the point. These were major stories they got wrong. You are completely on your own, America, in your search for truth right now. And it gives me no pleasure in saying that.
Allie, get your take on the whole issue, because it's what they want. It's what they've been telling their audiences now for 2 straight years. And it's also what they don't report about, how top officials exonerated Hillary when she should have been charged with the crime of obstruction in the Espionage Act, and all the FISA abuse, and all the people that signed on after being warned by Bruce Orr that it's phony, she paid for it, not to be trusted, it's never been verified or corroborated, but became the basis of 4 FISA warrants. They don't touch that story.
No, that's because they don't see themselves as truth tellers. They see themselves as vigilantes. So they are on a mission to accomplish something, and that is push a particular narrative. The narrative right now happens to be to make sure that Donald Trump gets impeached. So anything that they hear that falls into that preconceived notion of how they think that the world should be, they report on, whether or not reality actually lines up with that. So they start with the foregone conclusion, and then they try to fit in the pieces that fit into that. They leave out the things that don't fit into that conclusion, rather than looking at the facts of the story and then coming up with a conclusion, or better yet, letting the American people come up with their own conclusion. No, they see themselves as heroes, has nothing to do with the truth and everything to do with their own biased mission.
You know, John James, I watched your campaign very closely, and I watched you. You were down at one point, I think, by 30 points. You were closing that gap, and your story is so compelling and so amazing that I felt, my opinion, as an outsider, we loved having you on radio and TV, I felt they were purposely underreporting the great story of success that you have had in your life, as they didn't want you to win. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, well, I believe that my story is the story of so many people who've immigrated from all over the world and from all over the country to have better experience and better opportunity. And I love what Ali just said about vigilantism. Vigilantism is just a form of a mob mentality, and I believe that due process and truth is under attack in this country. I fought in my military career as a West Point graduate, as an Army captain, flying 750 hours combat in Operation Iraqi Freedom, because I love this Constitution, I love this country. The First Amendment's under attack when you can have malicious insinuation tearing down the journalistic integrity that we rely so much on, and it's going to result and someone getting badly hurt. We need to make sure that we are acting with integrity and we're holding the people who tell us these stories accountable, because you can't believe the storytellers anymore. We have to think for ourselves, and that's what I've talked about, is not just believing what we're being fed, but by thinking critically and by holding journalists accountable.
You know, Dan, on this program, I could start with Richard Jewell. Then I could talk about the vetting of Obama. Yeah. We were pretty much alone in doing that. I could talk about the Duke lacrosse case. I took the time to meet the families and the kids, those that would meet with me. I went down and interviewed George Zimmerman. I didn't rush to judgment, as the president did. Cambridge Police, Ferguson, Missouri, UVA, Baltimore, Maryland, and Obama's horrible record after 8 years. It's amazing what they miss. Why would they miss even the deep dive we've done into the deep state and real corruption and abuse of power at the top levels of the DOJ and the FBI? Why wouldn't they care about that story if they are in the media and say they're journalists?
Yeah, Sean, with the Covington kids this weekend, think about this. This could be you. This could be anyone. This could be your brother, your sister, your kids. These kids were at a rally in D.C., at a pro-life rally, and they fit every box the media can't stand. They were at a pro-life rally. They had MAGA hats on. They were young kids that went to a Christian school. And Sean, in the blink of an eye, in a snap of a finger, just like that, these kids' lives forever will be marked on the internet by vigilante, what they call media justice, where they jumped in, did no background and research on this case at all, and ruined their lives. They can ruin your future. They can ruin your job.
Yeah, Ali, why wouldn't they have gone after the Hebrew Israelites that hate everybody? And what they said to the kids, and we had the tapes. They started it all.
Right. The crime that they committed was not what they did, but the hat that they were wearing. That's the only crime that they actually committed, and the media knows that. Last word, John James.
The day before MLK Day, I wonder how many people were completely fine attacking 16-year-olds who were minding their own business, but then tweeted a post about Martin Luther King. People need to look at themselves in the mirror and look at not just discriminating against people, but because of how they think.
Prediction, they're not going to change at all. And they'll be breathless and hysterical in the next Trump story that think they got people. Sad. It's also dangerous. Thank you all. When we come back, we sent Sarah Carter to the Women's March this weekend in Washington, D.C. You will not believe what the people there said when Sarah asked them about the anti-Semitic scandal surrounding the group's founders. We'll play you the tape. And also tonight, a new Hannity Watch segment. We begin vetting the 2020 Democratic candidates. This, I promise you, is going to be fun over time. Stay with us. All right, the Women's March that we warned you about last week, well, it happened this past weekend, and we sent Fox News contributor Sarah Carter to the march in Washington, D.C., where the anti-Semitism scandal has been rocking the march organizers. And Sarah asked some of the people at the march about the controversy, and here's what they told her.
Tamika Mallory and Linda Sarsour, who organized this event, have been highly criticized for anti-Semitic statements and also for the fact that Tamika Mallory would not condemn Louis Farrakhan's statement about the Jewish people in the state of Israel. How do you reconcile their apparent hate speech by Louis Farrakhan and their failure to condemn it and then being here today?
One woman doesn't represent all women. She doesn't stand for the entire movement.
Irrelevant to the cause. None of the women here care about that.
Some mistakes within the leadership don't define the whole movement, and the movement as a whole still has a lot of good points, and there's still a lot of work to be done.
Do you condemn those anti-Semitic statements?
Of course, 100%. Of course. And I would say that you would find everybody here that would be true for everyone.
As someone who's Jewish, I'll say that us showing up isn't in support of those anti-Semitic comments, barely even in support of those leaders. It's in support of ourselves.
Do you condemn Tamika Mallory and Linda Sarsour?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. They're the leaders of this movement, and I think the leaders of this movement are looking to reach goals. And they have to do what they have to do to reach the goals.
I think the Women's March is larger than those two individuals. I think that they do not speak for all the women here.
No one said anything today anti-Semitic. So we're working with today, the here, the now, the present.
It's better to be a bad feminist than no feminist at all. So I think that it's important that even though one person does something wrong, that we still come here and we show up and we represent what we want to see in our government.
Interesting outfits. Fox News contributor Sarah Carter joins us now, along with Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce. Now, you were there in one capacity.
Yes.
Sarah, we'll start with you because you were interviewing the people at that particular march. They didn't seem to care, a lot of them, about real radical anti-Semitism, and you also mentioned the things that they had said. What else did you glean out of this experience that we sent you through?
I think it was shocking, Sean. For me, it was really disturbing that a lot of the people that I spoke with didn't just take a step back and say, absolutely, we condemn it. It's completely anti-Semitic. You know, I brought out the statements that were made by Louis Farrakhan. I asked them directly, do you condemn these statements? And so many people had such a difficult time actually saying that they condemned the statements, and that was what was really disturbing. On the other hand, there were a lot of young people marching. Some of them didn't even know what was going on the week prior. They didn't even understand what the controversy was about. Others just wanted to stay away from it altogether, and some, on the other hand, did say they did not condone it, they did condemn it, and that they were showing up anyways because this was part of their cause. This is something that they wanted to be a part of.
Yeah, Mallory, one of the organizers,
leadership,
referred to Farrakhan as the greatest ever, when he's probably the biggest anti-Semite in the entire country. Let's go to Linda Sarsour, another organizer. She's known to praise and support Sharia law. She said Ali, who was a victim of female genital mutilation, a victim. She says she doesn't deserve to be a woman. A woman deserves to have her female anatomy taken away. And then when she's confronted about it, she blamed the Jewish media. It doesn't get any more anti-woman than that, or anti-Semitic and racist than that.
Yeah, Ayan's personal experience, of course, is extensive, and she was being condemned because she was speaking honestly about the problems with radical Islam, and that if you care about women, that's something that we all have to be able to be honest about. But what's interesting, certainly about the march, and this speaks to, I think, also the American sensibility. Americans want to go out and have an impact. That's clear. Young people, I was doing it, of course. It's a wonderful, exciting thing to do. You want to make a difference. The problem is that they are being used by fraud. That they're being used by people who say, oh, we understand this, we agree with you, here's what we're going to be doing. And it becomes, when they will look back, as I have done to some degree with my leftist activism, is you think about the time that was wasted. You think about the grifters. You think about the fraud.
Maybe the part of it's Winston Churchill-ish. if you're 20 and not a liberal, you don't have a heart. 40 and conservative, you don't have a brain.
But what I think Sarah's report showed us was that there's no information flowing into those individuals, even immediate news from the week before, let alone historical answers about how women have gotten here, what we're facing now, what we've overcome, the things that unite us. That's what the focus can be. Who we are now in the 21st century.
You had a counter protest. How did that go?
That's right. Independent Women's Voice. It was great. I mean, our message was, look, there are problems that we've got to overcome, but it's the 21st century and it's time to come together, right? The argument and this rhetoric about dividing us and that there's an enemy and that everything is, you've got to go after people who want to put you into a camp or they're, it's the Handmaid's Tale. That's archaic. And it's also not true. Our message was coming together is what makes the difference.
Sarah, how do you go to a women's march when you have one of the organizers that supports Sharia, which abuses women, kills gays and lesbians, and persecutes Christians and Jews, many of these countries?
Well, the American people, and especially our youth, are being disenfranchised by journalism today. They're not hearing the truth. They're not having access to the truth. We really need to start educating ourselves, Sean, and the anti-Semitic behavior of both Tamika Mallory and Linda Sarsour is incredible. People should understand that. And unfortunately, a lot of young people went and marched and they had no idea what was going on with their leadership that day. And that's truly unfortunate.
By the quick addition is that the liberals who went by our march, our rally, were nice. They recognized we were nice. They liked our signs. They expressed dismay at the hostility that was happening across the street. And a thing for conservatives to remember, be out there, meet people. Don't let them isolate you.
If I go out there, I'm going to be... You really want to hang out with me if I'm out there? Do you want to hang out with...
Not on the subway, but we should absolutely go out and talk to people.
Of an army of security and every one of my martial arts partners. All right, good to see you. When we come back, you don't want to miss our next segment. We're going to do something the mainstream media, I promise, is never going to do. We are beginning our vetting. It's a process. Hannity Watch, the 2020 Democratic candidates. We begin day one next. Ali, who was a victim of female genital mutilation, a victim. Mm-hmm. She says she doesn't deserve to be a woman. A woman deserves to have her female anatomy taken away. And then when she's confronted about it, she blamed the Jewish media. Mm-hmm. It doesn't get any more anti-woman than that, or anti-Semitic and racist than that.
Yeah. Ayan's personal experience, of course, is extensive. And she was being condemned because she was speaking honestly about the problems with radical Islam. And that if you care about women, that's something that we all have to be able to be honest about. But what's interesting, certainly about the march, and this speaks to, I think, also the American sensibility. Americans want to go out and have an impact. That's clear. Young people, I was doing it, of course. It's a wonderful, exciting thing to do. You want to make a difference. The problem is that they are being used by fraud. That they're being used by people who say, oh, we understand this, we agree with you, here's what we're going to be doing. And it becomes, when they will look back, as I have done to some degree with my leftist activism, is you think about the time that was wasted. You think about the grifters. You think about the fraud.
Maybe the part of it's Winston Churchill-ish. If you're 20 and not a liberal, you don't have a heart. 40 and conservative, you don't have a brain.
But what I think Sarah's report showed us was that there's no information flowing into those individuals, even immediate news from the week before, let alone historical answers about how women have gotten here, what we're facing now, what we've overcome, the things that unite us. That's what the focus can be. Who we are now in the 21st century.
You had a counter protest. How did that go?
That's right. Independent Women's Voice. It was great. I mean, our message was, look, there are problems that we've got to overcome, but it's the 21st century and it's time to come together, right? The argument and this rhetoric about dividing us and that there's an enemy and that everything is, you've got to go after people who want to put you into a camp or they're, it's the Handmaid's Tale. That's archaic. And it's also not true. Our message was coming together is what makes the difference.
Sarah, how do you go to a women's march when you have one of the organizers that supports Sharia, which abuses women, kills gays and lesbians, and persecutes Christians and Jews, many of these countries?
Well, the American people, and especially our youth, are being disenfranchised by by journalism today. They're not hearing the truth. They're not having access to the truth. We really need to start educating ourselves, Sean, and the anti-Semitic behavior of both Tamika Mallory and Linda Sarsour is incredible. People should understand that. And unfortunately, a lot of young people went and marched, and they had no idea what was going on with their leadership that day, and that's truly unfortunate.
But the quick addition is that the liberals who went by our march, our rally, were nice. They recognized we were nice. They liked our signs. They expressed dismay at the hostility that was happening across the street. And a thing for conservatives to remember, be out there, meet people. Don't let them isolate you.
If I go out there, I'm going to be... You really want to hang out with me if I'm out there? You want to hang out
on
with...
the subway, but we should absolutely go out and talk to people.
Of an army of security and every one of my martial arts partners. All right, good to see you. When we come back, you don't want to miss our next segment. We're going to do something the mainstream media, I promise, is never going to do. We are beginning our vetting. It's a process. Hannity Watch, the 2020 Democratic candidates. We begin day one next.